The smell of cleaning supplies hit me first. Then I saw my family photo sitting next to a bottle of floor cleaner. My coffee mug balanced on the edge of a mop bucket, my staplers and pens scattered across a metal shelf between toilet paper rolls and disinfectant spray. I stood in the doorway of the janitor's closet, staring at my work stuff. Everything I'd left on my desk yesterday was now shoved into this tiny room. The fluorescent light above buzzed like an angry wasp. Water dripped somewhere in the corner. My hands clenched into fists. Someone had moved all my things here as a joke. But who? And why? I picked up my photo carefully, wiping off a drop of something wet. It showed me with my husband and 2 kids at the beach last summer. We looked so happy, so normal. If only they knew who I really was. From outside the closet, I heard voices in the hallway. Someone was laughing. The sound made my stomach twist. Were they laughing at me? I took a deep breath and looked around the small space again. A desk phone sat on top of an overturned cleaning bucket. This was my office now, I guess. At least until I figured out what was happening here. They have no idea who I am, I whispered to myself. I stepped out of the janitor's closet and almost bumped into Kendra Melton. She was leaning against the wall with her arms crossed, wearing that smirk I'd seen too many times this week. 3 other coworkers stood behind her, trying to look busy but clearly watching. "Oh, sorry," Kendra said, not sounding sorry at all. "I thought this was more your vibe." The group behind her snickered. Someone covered their mouth to hide a laugh. My face burned hot, but I kept my voice steady. "Did you move my things?" I asked. Kendra shrugged. "The cleaning crew needed space in their real closet. Figured you wouldn't mind sharing with the mops." She looked me up and down. "Seems about right for your pay grade." More quiet laughter from her audience. I wanted to tell her exactly who she was messing with. But I couldn't. Not yet. "I see," I said simply. "Don't worry," Kendra added with fake sweetness. "I'm sure you'll make it work. You seem resourceful." The way she said resourceful sounded like an insult, like I was some desperate person who should be grateful for scraps. I nodded and walked away, hearing their whispers behind me. Let them laugh. They wouldn't be laughing much longer. 3 weeks earlier, I'd walked into the same building for the first time. The security guard asked for my name, and I'd practiced my answer in the car. Allison Brooks, new admin support. It wasn't a lie, exactly. My name really was Allison Brooks. But I wasn't new admin support. I was the chief operating officer of the entire company. The board had sent me here undercover to see what was really happening in this branch office. The reports coming from here didn't add up. Productivity was down, but nobody could explain why. Customer complaints were rising. Good employees kept quitting without clear reasons. The manager, Jetson Roy, seemed clueless about what was wrong. So the board decided to send someone in quietly. Someone who could watch and learn without people putting on fake smiles and pretending everything was perfect. That someone was me. I'd spent weeks preparing. Changed my clothes to look more ordinary. Practiced acting shy and uncertain. Memorized a fake work history that would get me hired as basic office help. The plan was simple. Spend a month observing, then report back with recommendations. Maybe some people needed retraining. Maybe some needed to be transferred. I never expected someone like Kendra Melton. My first day, I'd worn a cardigan from the thrift store. It was soft and comfortable, but definitely not expensive. I thought it would help me blend in. Kendra noticed it right away. "Cute sweater," she'd said during our introduction. But the way she said cute made it sound like pathetic. Her eyes scanned me from head to toe like she was adding up the cost of my outfit. "Thank you," I'd replied politely. "Where'd you get it? Looks very budget-friendly." A few people nearby turned to look. I felt their eyes judging my clothes, my hair, my whole appearance. "Just a local shop," I said. Kendra nodded like that confirmed something she already suspected. Well, we all start somewhere, right? The comment stung more than it should have. In my real life, I wore $1,000 suits to board meetings. I owned jewelry worth more than most people's cars. But here, I was just someone in a cheap cardigan who deserved pity. I smiled and nodded, filing the moment away in my memory. First strike, Kendra? Even then, I was already starting to build a mental file on her. I just didn't know how thick that file would get. The coffee thing started on day 3. I'd brought my favorite mug from home. Nothing fancy, just a plain blue one that held the perfect amount of caffeine. Every morning, I'd fill it up in the break room and take it to my desk. But it kept disappearing. The first time, I thought maybe I'd left it somewhere. The second time, I figured the cleaning crew took it. But on day 5, I saw exactly what was happening. I walked into the break room and spotted Kendra at the coffee machine. She was holding my blue mug, filling it with fresh coffee. When she saw me, she didn't even look embarrassed. "Oh, this yours?" she asked, like she didn't know perfectly well it was mine. "Yes," I said. She took a long sip of the coffee. "Well, I already started drinking it. You can have it back when I'm done." She walked past me, taking my coffee and my mug with her. I watched her go, my jaw tight with anger. Later, I saw her at her desk, laughing with a coworker while drinking from my mug. They both looked over at me and giggled. Strike 2, Kendra. The email incident happened during my second week. I'd sent a message to Jetson Roy about some supply orders. Nothing important, just doing my fake job as admin support. Somehow, that private email ended up forwarded to the entire office mailing list. Everyone got to see my message asking about toilet paper and printer ink. It was embarrassing, even though there was nothing actually wrong with the email. I found out when people started making jokes about it in the hallway. "Hey Allison, how's our toilet paper situation?" Someone called out, laughing. "Should we start hoarding printer ink?" Another person added. I tracked down the source quickly enough. The email had been forwarded from Kendra's computer. When I asked her about it, she just shrugged. "Oops," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "Must have hit reply all by mistake." But I knew it wasn't a mistake. The original email was sent to Jetson Roy only. To forward it to everyone, she would have had to deliberately add the entire office to the recipient list. "Could happen to anyone," she added with that fake smile. No apology, no explanation, just a shrug and a lie. Strike 3, Kendra. The lunch setup was brilliant, I had to admit. Kendra approached me on a Thursday morning with helpful concern written all over her face. "You know, Allison, you should try that new cafe across the street," she said. "Much better than the sandwich shop you usually go to." I usually brought lunch from home, but I played along. "Oh, really?" "Absolutely. Fresh salads, great soups, perfect for someone watching their budget." The way she said budget made it clear she thought I was poor. "Sounds nice," I said. "You should go today. Right at noon. That's when they put out the daily specials." It seemed like genuine advice, so I thanked her and decided to check it out. The cafe was decent enough, though it took longer than expected to get my order. I ended up being gone for about 45 minutes instead of my usual 30-minute lunch break. When I came back, my desk was gone. Not just cleared off, actually gone. The whole desk moved somewhere else. In its place was an empty space and some dust marks on the carpet. "Where's my desk?" I asked the nearest coworker. "Oh, Kendra said you wouldn't need it anymore." Something about reorganizing the space. I found my desk shoved into a corner by the copy machine, buried behind boxes of office supplies. I stood there looking at my displaced desk, feeling a familiar calm settle over me. It was the same feeling I got during hostile board meetings when someone to challenge my authority. Cold, focused, and absolutely certain about what came next. I picked up my blue coffee mug from where someone had left it on the windowsill. A few drops of dirty water had collected in the bottom. I walked to the janitor's closet, my new office, and rinsed the mug in the small sink. "All right then," I said quietly to myself. This wasn't just workplace teasing anymore. This was systematic harassment. Kendra wasn't just being mean, she was actively trying to humiliate me and make my work life miserable. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She thought I was powerless. She thought I was some desperate admin worker who would take any abuse just to keep a job. She had no idea who she was really messing with. I set my clean mug on the metal shelf next to the cleaning supplies and started arranging my other things. If Kendra wanted to play games, I'd play along. But I'd also be keeping score. And when the time came to settle up, she was going to be very, very surprised. "No rush," I whispered, organizing my fake workspace. "I'll make it clean." For the next week, I became exactly what Kendra wanted me to be. Quiet, grateful, and completely harmless. When she made jokes at my expense, I laughed along. When she interrupted me in meetings, I smiled and let her take over. When she gave me extra work that wasn't my job, I thanked her for the opportunity. "You're such a team player, Allison," she said after dumping a stack of filing on my janitor's closet desk. "Some people would complain about this kind of thing." "Happy to help," I replied sweetly. I watched her relax. Her comments became more casual, more careless. She stopped checking over her shoulder when she made fun of me. She started treating my humiliation like it was just the natural order of things. Perfect. During this time, I also started paying closer attention to how she treated other people. Turns out, I wasn't her only target. She was dismissive with the cleaning crew, rude to junior employees, and condescending to anyone she saw as beneath her. But with me, she'd gone further than with anyone else, maybe because she thought I was the safest target, someone who would never fight back. She was building a pattern of behavior that would be very interesting to document. I started keeping detailed records of everything, not just what Kendra did to me, but her overall performance as an employee. She was often late to work, usually by 10 or 15 minutes, but sometimes by a full hour. She took long lunches that stretched into 2-hour breaks. She left early at least twice a week, claiming various personal emergencies. Her work quality was sloppy. Reports were submitted late or with obvious errors. She missed deadlines regularly and always had creative excuses ready. Client calls were handled carelessly, with important details forgotten or ignored. But the most interesting thing was how she interacted with Jetson Roy, our manager. Around him, she was a completely different person. Helpful, hardworking, always ready with a solution. Jetson had no idea what she was really like when he wasn't watching. I kept track of attendance records, pulled email timestamps, and quietly saved examples of her poor work. I cross-referenced customer complaints with dates when she was the primary contact. A clear picture started forming. Kendra Melton wasn't just a workplace bully. She was a liability to the entire company, and she was about to find out that I had the power to do something about it. The breaking point came during a team meeting about customer service improvements. I was presenting some ideas, carefully simple ones that fit my admin support role, when Kendra cut me off mid-sentence. "Sorry, but this is really basic stuff," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "Anyone could come up with these suggestions." The room went completely quiet. Even Jetson Roy looked uncomfortable. I'd been speaking for maybe 30 seconds before she interrupted. I looked around the table. Some people were staring at their papers, embarrassed by the rudeness. Others watched to see how I'd react. "Noted," I said calmly, and wrote something in my notebook. Kendra looked pleased with herself, like she'd just put me in my proper place. She took over the rest of my presentation time, offering her own ideas that were mostly just rephrased versions of what I'd been trying to say. But that notebook entry wasn't about customer service improvements. It was about the date, time, and witnesses to her latest act of workplace harassment. Meeting notes that would be very useful later when I had to explain to the board exactly why certain personnel changes were necessary. Kendra had no idea, but she just documented her own downfall. After that meeting, something interesting started happening. Coworkers began stopping by my janitor's closet to talk. "Can I ask you something?" whispered Beth from accounting. She glanced around nervously before stepping inside my tiny office. "Of course. How do you stay so calm when Kendra treats you like that?" "I would have lost it weeks ago." I shrugged. "No point getting upset about things you can't control." Beth nodded, then leaned closer. "She's been doing stuff like this for months, not just to you. Last quarter, she made case from marketing cry during a presentation, and she told the new intern that her ideas were cute but useless in front of a client. More people came by over the next few days, always quietly, always checking to make sure Kendra wasn't around. They shared stories about missed deadlines, rude comments, and unprofessional behavior. I listened carefully to each complaint, asked gentle questions, took mental notes. "Thank you for telling me," I said to each person. "It helps to know I'm not imagining things." They left feeling heard and understood. I filed away every detail they'd shared. The case against Kendra Melton was building beautifully. That evening, I called Chairman William Hayes from my real office downtown. My corner office with the city view and the mahogany desk. The office that Kendra would never believe existed. "How's the undercover work going?" he asked. It's worse than we thought, I said. The productivity problems aren't random. There's a specific employee who's creating a toxic environment. I gave him a summary of what I'd observed: the harassment, the poor work quality, the effect on team morale. I kept it professional and factual. Sounds like we need to make some changes, William said. I'd like to proceed with the plan. Full documentation first, then decisive action. How much longer do you need? I thought about Kendra's smug face during that afternoon's meeting. About my coffee mug sitting in a janitor's closet. About all the other employees who were suffering because one person was allowed to poison the workplace. 1 more week, I said. I want to be absolutely thorough. Approved. Do what you need to do. I hung up and looked out my rear window at the city lights below. Soon, this whole charade would be over, and Kendra Melton would finally learn who she'd been messing with. I started asking pointed questions in meetings. Nothing dramatic, just gentle inquiries that highlighted gaps in Kendra's work. Kendra, when will the Morrison client report be finished? I asked during Tuesday's status meeting. She blinked, caught off guard. Oh, it's almost done. Great. Should we expect it today or tomorrow? Tomorrow for sure. I made a note in my fake admin notebook. Perfect. I'll let Mr. Roy know he can review it Wednesday morning. Jetson Roy looked up from his own notes. Actually, wasn't that due last Friday? Kendra's face reddened slightly. There were some complications with the data. What kind of complications? I asked innocently. The questions were simple, but they exposed the cracks in her facade. When she couldn't give clear answers, other people started noticing. When deadlines were missed, there was now someone tracking them. Who was supposed to follow up with the client about their billing question? I asked during another meeting. I think maybe Case was handling that? Kendra said, trying to shift responsibility. Case shook his head. No, that was assigned to you last week. Slowly, methodically, I was documenting every instance of poor performance and unprofessional behavior. And I was doing it in front of witnesses. The pressure started getting to Kendra. By Thursday, she was delegating most of her work to interns and junior employees. Can you handle the Peterson account review? She asked Amy, a college intern who'd been there for 3 weeks. I've never done an account review before, Amy said nervously. It's easy, just look at the numbers and write a summary. I'll check it later. But Kendra never checked Amy's work. She was too busy taking long lunches and leaving early for urgent personal matters. The Peterson account review was submitted with major errors that I quietly documented. Deadlines continued to slip. A client presentation was postponed because Kendra's research was incomplete. An important contract renewal was delayed because she forgot to send the paperwork. I watched it all happen while maintaining my helpful admin support persona. When Jetson Roy asked me to help track project statuses, I was happy to assist. When Beth from accounting needed someone to double-check Kendra's expense reports, I volunteered my time. Everything was falling apart around Kendra, and she was too focused on her next opportunity to humiliate me to notice. Perfect. The client call happened on Friday afternoon. Peterson Industries, one of our biggest accounts, called to complain about service issues. Jetson Roy was in another meeting, so the call got transferred to Kendra. I happened to be walking past her desk when she answered. Peterson Industries? Yeah, what's up? She said casually, like she was talking to a friend instead of a major client. I could hear the client's concerned voice through the phone, though I couldn't make out specific words. Kendra's responses were dismissive and unprofessional. Look, these things happen, she said with a laugh. No point getting worked up about it. More talking from the client's end, sounding increasingly frustrated. I'll get back to you when I get a chance, Kendra said. Probably sometime next week. She hung up without saying goodbye. Later that day, I quietly requested a copy of that call recording from our IT department. As admin support, I had legitimate reasons to access call logs for filing purposes. The recording was even worse than I'd thought. The client had been calling about a serious billing error that was costing them thousands of dollars. Kendra had brushed off their concerns and made jokes about computer glitches. By Monday, Peterson Industries had filed a formal complaint. Monday afternoon, Kendra caught me looking through a thick manila folder at my janitor's closet desk. She appeared in the doorway suddenly, making me look up. "What's that?" she asked, trying to peer over my shoulder. I closed the folder casually and smiled at her. "Progress. Progress on what?" "Just keeping track of things. You know how it is. Someone has to stay organized around here." Her eyes narrowed slightly. For the first time since I'd started working here, she looked uncertain, like maybe she was beginning to suspect that something was different about me. "What kind of things?" she pressed. "Oh, just admin stuff. Reports, deadlines, client feedback, boring paperwork that someone needs to manage." I kept my voice light and friendly, but I could see wheels turning in her head. Maybe she was starting to realize that I'd been paying closer attention than she thought. "Well, don't let it interfere with your real work," she said, trying to regain her superior tone. "Of course not," I agreed. "I know exactly what my real work is." The double meaning was lost on her, but not on me. My real work was almost finished, and the results were going to be spectacular. Tuesday morning, an email went out to the entire branch office. The sender was Jetson Roy, but I knew the real order had come from much higher up. Subject: mandatory all-hands meeting, Thursday 10 a.m. Location: main conference room. Topic: departmental review. Kendra rolled her eyes when she saw it. "Another boring HR update," she muttered to the person sitting next to her. "Probably about diversity training or safety protocols." Other employees seemed mildly curious, but not concerned. These kinds of meetings happened a few times a year, usually just policy updates or budget announcements. But I knew this meeting was different. I'd helped plan it during a conference call with the board last night. This wasn't about policies or budgets. This was about consequences. I spent Tuesday and Wednesday putting final touches on my documentation. Every incident was dated and verified. Every complaint was recorded with witness names. Every missed deadline and failed project was cataloged with specific examples. The folder on my janitor's closet desk had grown thick with evidence. Soon, everyone would understand exactly what that evidence meant. Thursday morning couldn't come fast enough. Thursday at 9:45 a.m., I walked into the main conference room. I was 15 minutes early, which gave me time to set up at the head of the long table. I placed my thick folder in front of the main chair and arranged my notes. Some employees started filtering in around 9:55. They looked at me sitting at the head of the table with confusion. I'd never sat there before. That was Jetson Roy's usual spot, or sometimes a visiting manager from corporate. "Is Tom running late?" someone asked. "He'll be here," I said simply. More people arrived. Beth from accounting gave me a curious look. Case from marketing seemed surprised to see me in a position of authority. Amy, the intern, looked nervous about everything. Kendra arrived at exactly 10 a.m., clearly annoyed about having to attend another pointless meeting. She glanced at me dismissively and took a seat in the middle of the table. "Where's Roy?" she asked loudly. "Some of us have real work to do." I checked my watch. 10 on the dot. "Let's begin," I said, standing up. The room fell quiet. Everyone was staring at me now, confused about why the admin support person was running the meeting. Time for the truth. I stood at the head of the conference table and looked around the room. 12 faces stared back at me with varying degrees of confusion. Kendra looked particularly annoyed, like I was wasting her valuable time. "For those who don't know," I began, my voice calm and professional, "I'm Allison Brooks, Chief Operating Officer of this company." The silence that followed was deafening. Beth's mouth fell open. Case blinked rapidly like he was trying to process what I'd said. Amy, the intern, looked like she might faint. Kendra's face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, and then something that might have been fear. "I've been here for the past month," I continued, "working undercover as admin support to observe daily operations and identify problems that were affecting productivity and morale." Someone coughed nervously. Papers rustled as people shifted in their chairs. The board received concerning reports about this branch office. Customer complaints were rising. Good employees were quitting. Productivity was declining. We needed to understand why. I opened my folder and pulled out the first page of documentation. What I found was worse than expected. Kendra tried to speak, but her voice came out as a croak. She cleared her throat and tried again. This has to be some kind of joke." "No joke," I said firmly. I began laying out the evidence, page by page. Each document was dated, verified, and devastating. Exhibit A. Attendance records showing chronic lateness and early departures. I slid the first page across the table where everyone could see it. Exhibit B. Client complaints specifically related to unprofessional communication and missed follow-ups. Another page joined the first. Exhibit C. Missed deadlines resulting in project delays and client dissatisfaction. More documentation spread across the table. Kendra's face had gone pale. You can't just spy on people like this. There are laws about... About what? I interrupted. About documenting workplace harassment? About tracking employee performance? About recording calls with clients who specifically request that their complaints be addressed? I pulled out the transcript of her call with Peterson Industries. Her exact words were printed in black and white. Look, these things happen. No point getting worked up about it, I read aloud. I'll get back to you when I get a chance, probably sometime next week. The room was dead silent. Even Kendra seemed stunned into speechlessness. This client was calling about a billing error, costing them thousands of dollars, I continued. Instead of addressing their concern professionally, you dismissed them and hung up without resolving anything. I closed the folder and looked directly at Kendra. When I spoke, my voice was steady and final. Miss Melton, you've had every opportunity to succeed here. Instead, you chose to create a hostile work environment, harass your colleagues, and provide substandard service to our clients. Kendra finally found her voice. This is ridiculous. I've been a good employee. Ask Tom Roy, he'll tell you. Mr. Roy has been informed of my findings, I said. The board has reviewed all evidence and reached a decision. I paused, letting the weight of those words sink in. Your employment with this company is terminated, effective immediately. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. No one moved. No one spoke. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings, I continued. Your final paycheck will be processed according to company policy. Kendra looked around the table desperately, like someone might come to her rescue. But everyone was staring at their hands or their papers. No one met her eyes. You can't do this, she whispered. Actually, I said, I can. And I just did. 2 security guards appeared in the doorway, summoned by a text I'd sent during the meeting. The security guards waited politely while Kendra slowly stood up. Her face had gone from pale to red, and her hands were shaking slightly. This isn't over, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Yes, it is, I replied calmly. She looked around the room one more time, maybe hoping someone would object or defend her. But the silence stretched on. Everyone who had suffered under her behavior for months just watched quietly as she finally faced consequences. The walk to her desk took less than 2 minutes. She grabbed a few personal items, a coffee mug, a small plant, some family photos. Everything else belonged to the company. At the elevator, she turned back toward the conference room, where the rest of us were still gathered. You people have no idea what you're losing, she called out. I followed her to the elevator bank, maintaining professional distance while the security guards handled the details. For what it's worth, I said as the elevator doors opened, I hope you learn from this experience. She looked at me with something between hatred and disbelief. Who are you really? I'm exactly who I said I was, I replied. You just weren't paying attention. The elevator doors closed and Kendra Melton was gone. When I returned to the conference room, the atmosphere had completely changed. People were sitting up straighter, looking at me with new respect, but also relief. I know this has been a shock, I said, taking my seat again. But I want you to understand why this was necessary. I gestured to the documentation still spread across the table. A workplace should be somewhere people feel safe to do their best work. When one person creates fear, hostility, or unprofessional conditions, it affects everyone. Beth nodded slowly. Case was reading through some of the client complaints with wide eyes. Over the next few weeks, we're going to be making changes to ensure this kind of situation doesn't happen again. Better communication, clearer accountability, and more support for all employees. Amy, the intern, raised her hand tentatively. What happens to Miss Melton's projects? They'll be redistributed fairly among the team, with additional resources and support as needed. No one will be set up to fail. I could see the relief spreading around the room. These people had been walking on eggshells for months, never knowing when they might become Kendra's next target. We're building a better place to work, I concluded. Starting today. Later that afternoon, I sat in Jetson Roy's office, my temporary office, while I finished the transition process. My family photo was back on a real desk, next to a proper computer and phone. Jetson had taken the news about my real identity surprisingly well. I knew something was that different about you, he'd said. You asked better questions than most admin support staff. The branch office was already feeling different. People were talking more freely, collaborating on projects, sharing ideas without fear of being shot down or humiliated. I pulled out my phone and called Chairman Hayes. Mission accomplished, I reported. The primary source of the productivity problems has been eliminated. I'll have a full report to you by tomorrow. Any other issues we need to address? Some process improvements, but nothing major. This really was mainly about one toxic employee poisoning the environment. I hung up and leaned back in the chair, thinking about the past month. All those mornings in the janitor's closet, drinking coffee from my mug that smelled like cleaning supplies. All those times I'd smiled politely while being treated like I didn't matter. But it had been worth it. Sometimes the best way to fix a problem is to experience it firsthand. I picked up my family photo and smiled. If they underestimate you, let them. Just make sure you're ready when it's time to stand up.